Zeri is a champion that is a late game monster. She is a late game monster. If you play her with a Lulu or a Yumi, she becomes an absolute unstoppable beast. I think she is like Jinx Tristana level late game on steroid, just you're all dead. But the problem is high skill ceiling. I think the average player will have a very big problem using her auto attacks correctly. Hey, what's up guys, Darkbreaker here, and in today's video, welcome to this new tier list for wildrift patch 4.0b. In this patch, we have a few changes. As you guys can see, we have buffs for Jarvan, Misfortune, Senna, and Yasuo. We also have some nerfs, Caitlyn, Camille, Yumi, and Zed, especially Zed jungle. Then some item changes. I don't think they will matter too much. I think the biggest changes are I lock it irrelevant by the way because it's only magic damage. Visage probably gonna be very good on champions like Zed or other champions, and that like Wukong as well. Our Runwind's Omen looks like it's gonna be better as well. And then some changes on runes, especially on second wind for more sustain, and then some adjustments for Morgana, but I don't think they matter at all. I guess they make support Morgana slightly better, but I'm not the biggest fan of support Morgana. I think what you guys should be most excited about is the new champion Zeri, who is a very mechanically hard champion to play. I'm gonna give you guys my opinion about this champion and my rating about this champion later on in this video. I hope you guys will enjoy it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you guys are enjoying my tier list so far, and definitely check out my how to be a good jungler video if you guys haven't done it yet. And I will also update you guys with more content like this on how to be a good Baron laner, mid laner, ADC, and support in the future as well, so you guys don't want to miss it out. And let's get started. Here, this is it, how to be a good jungler macro guide. Let's get started with the tier list. Hey, by the way, if you guys are new to the channel, I just want to make sure the tier lists are just orientation for you guys. I just keep repeating, but there will always be people complaining and crying. This is my subjective opinion about what is good in the meta, and if you guys think you can trust my opinion, then feel free to orientate and use this tier list. And if you guys don't, play whatever champion you want. You can play whatever you want. It's gonna work if you play well. If you play the champion well and you have mastered it, you can play any champion you want. But there are some champions that are just broken from the get-go, and if you're good on them, then winning a game is gonna be much easier. So let's get started with the Baron lane tier list. I don't think there are any major changes in my opinion for the S+ tier in comparison to beforehand. The meta is still pretty much the same. Camille got slightly nerfed, but it doesn't really affect the Baron lane too much. It's more like a nerf for the jungle. Aatrox is still one of the most broken Baron laners in my opinion. Has a lot of damage, crowd control, and sustain, and is on top of that super tanky. Gwen is one of the best late game hyper carries in the Baron lane that does magic damage. She has true damage as well, and once you have like 3 items with the ultimate, you can just run on people. Like 3 items Gwen is probably one of the most disgusting champions for sure. If you see a Gwen with Ghost and ultimate running you down and activating second ability, just run, or maybe just give up. Then we have Jax. Jax right now is actually one of my favorite split pushers. He's an excellent duelist. Some people say he's not that strong in the early game. I disagree. I think he's really if you play second wind and you have or bone plating and you have grasp, or you start ruby grasp plus second wind, your laning phase is super solid, and there are only a few champions that can actually bully Jax in the early game super hard. Maybe Akali and Jace, but besides that, I think Jax is super strong. And in the late game, with the Hullbreaker, he is a permanent split pushing threat. Just super annoying to deal with, and 1v1 almost unstoppable. Now Wukong is a super solid laner, and then on top of that, he is insane in teamfights with his AoE ultimate. Fiora is an early game monster, one of the best duelists and a split pushing monster, and also scales like a truck. The only downside, I guess, is that her team fighting is pretty hard to play correctly, knowing when to go in, knowing how to go in, knowing which person to target, etc. So if you want to play Fiora, you really need to master her and play her a lot. Now Gragas, I've played Gragas multiple times using a tank build and also a full AP build, and I can just say Gragas is a super solid champion and very easy to play. With the E-Flash, maybe not that easy, or with a nice ultimate to catch people off. I guess that's the hard part, but overall, super strong champion. And now Jace. Jace, one of the strongest lane bullies in the Baron lane right now. I think he is absolutely cracked. He does tons of damage, and then on top of that, he has the late game poking damage. Kind of thoughts off in the late game, have to admit it in comparison to other champions. But in the early mid game, he is very strong, and he can secure the turrets. Like he will dominate the lane, he will secure the turret, and then he's just gonna rotate the whole time. Renekton has the whole package. She is in the early game extremely strong. He's a very lane dominant champion, has a lot of damage, has crowd control, has mobility, is tanky. Akali, one of the best 1vs9 hyper carry assassins, does tons of damage and just one-shots people in team fights. The laning phase or the Baron lane matchups aren't that easy for her, but in the right hands she can definitely pop off. Riven, I think in lower ranks, she is really insane. Even in high elo, if you're proficient on her, you can make her work. High mobility, high damage. Wait, since when did I have Garen in S+ tier? Since when? I think he's S tier. Honestly, I had a few games I've played him. He's very strong, but should I put him S+ tier or S tier? I have Riven S tier. S+ tier. I mean, Riven is, I think, in anything till Grandmaster, she is so good on the right hands. I guess I have to put the tag, need to be proficient on her. I mean, Garen is very easy to play. I guess that's the advantage. He's tanky, he has the silence, his laning phase is super solid. The only downside, he really doesn't have that much weaknesses. I'm gonna keep him here. Just for the ultimate and the silence. Early game, super solid. And even mid and late game, he's also fine. Has a lot of damage, is super tanky, good frontline. What's the comparison to Sett and Darius? I mean, Darius has the problem that he gets kited in teamfights super hard. And Sett has a similar problem. And the advantage of Garen is like Garen is untouchable, unkillable. Sterk's Gauge, second ability, Stoneplate. The amount of damage you can soak and the amount of utility you provide with good time silence. A good time silence just ruins the opponent. He can't use any abilities, he can't use summoner splits. Hit my nose. Wait a second. Yeah, I mean, I keep repeating myself when it comes on to Sett and Darius. Just the kiting factor, I guess. I mean, they are in between S and S+, in my opinion. Now, Sion. Wait, what happened to the music? Wait a second. Sion, solid laner, good split pusher, good frontline, good crowd control. Sion, I mean, Malphite and Shen, very good in team fights, tanky, but they kind of get outscaled, and they aren't the hyper carries that you need in solo queue. If your teammates are bad, you will have a problem. Aurelia is a good hyper carry. The downside is that she has a lot of hard matchups in the Baron lane that really don't favor her too much. And she is very high skill. Like, she has a high skill ceiling to make her work. I'm gonna say it later on for Zeri and other champions. If the champion has like a really high skill requirement, I might put them lower than the full potential. Because full potential, a good Aurelia can be S+, in my opinion. Especially if you pick her into the right team comp. Singe early game weak, but late game scaling monster and insane in team fights. Pantheon early game very strong, but late game super weak. Warwick, kind of cheesy pick. In the early game, very strong, but not that good in team fights. Akshan, excellent in the early game, super strong lane bully. The downside is that he's very easy to punish. Cannon, insane team fight and very strong early game, but pretty squishy and gets outscaled by a lot of champions in the side lane. So you will, if you play against a hardbreaker champion, you will always have the problem you can't hold him, and he will always consistently pressure. It's gonna be a pain in the ass for you if you're not hard winning whenever you're joining a team fight. Yone, very strong hard scaling champion, has a lot of hard matchups though in the Baron lane and isn't that strong in the early game. Same applies for Yasuo. Kassadin in the early game not that strong, but the late game monster, scales like a truck, kind of slow paced. But if you get to scale, he is an absolute unit. Now Diana is a hypercarry assassin that is really strong, but I feel like she has a lot of hard matchups where she can't do that well, like I would like her to see. But overall, like if you play in jungle and mid lane, she is very good. Trinima in the early game, pretty weak, has a lot of hard matchups, but 3 items, he scales like a truck and he becomes a very strong duelist in my opinion. Like even level 5 against some champions, you can just run them down since you have the ultimate that denies them from killing you for 5 seconds. Teemo in the early game, a monster. It's just disgusting the poke and harassment he can do in the early game. In the late game, he can also be a pain in the ass with his shrooms, setting them up right before team fight, and he's kind of like a guerrilla hit and miss. Jump in, hit them, and then jump back out again. Very annoying actually. I've seen actually Teemo mid lane be doing super good. I've seen one Teemo mid lane. I've had him 2 times. He played so good. Okay, next one, Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo is, I think he's overall decent at everything, and he is good frontline, but I guess that's about it. Oh, Zed got kind of nerfed, but it's for the jungle. I'm just gonna put this down him. Zed, I think Zed is tricky, because he has a lot of hard matchups, but there are some matchups that he can do pretty decent, and it's a high skill matchup. Like, you need good skill on Zed to make him work in the Baron lane. Olaf, super situational pick and very cheesy and snowballing. If it doesn't work in the early game, you are kind of screwed and you can't do anything. Graves, in the early game against some matchups he is fine, but I feel like he is the type of champion that is too scaling and too AFK farming, which doesn't necessarily work in solo queue if your bot lane is 0-10 in 5 minutes. If that happens, you can scale all you want, it's not gonna work, because Graves is very slow pace. I feel like before 3 items, he can't do anything. And then even that, he's not that good in team fights, and he would struggle against a lot of team comps. He's a very situational pick, he's a good counter pick into some matchups. I guess you can do well against a Fiora, I guess maybe against a Riven as well, or maybe other bruisers, so you can make it work. But overall, I think he's kind of inconsistent. Nasus, I know a lot of you guys might enjoy Nasus. I am not a Nasus enjoyer. If you want to play Nasus, play LoL PC, but I think he's not fitting in wildrift, and the playstyle will not work in solo queue a lot of times. Sometimes you can AFK farm, you're getting scale, you get to scale, and then you just run them down, and majority of the times you just can't do anything. That's my opinion. And he's very weak in the early game and easy to punish. Like, he has a lot of bad matchups. Nautilus, I think Nautilus is fine, but in my opinion, I think he fits better in the jungle or support. Especially, I think in support he's such a strong pick. Why would you waste his potential and use him in the Baron lane? Oh, I just remembered, Thresh Baron lane. Thresh Baron lane is actually so annoying, but he gets outscaled hard. I'm gonna put Thresh in the same tier like a Nautilus. They're both very annoying. Maybe Thresh could be A, but I'm gonna put him here right now. I think that's a sweet spot. Thresh Baron and B tier. Very annoying in the early game. Good harassment, good kiteback, stanky, but he pots off. You get outscaled. you get outscaled by a Sandra champion. The Sandra Hullbreaker champion just outscales you so hard, and you will never be able to hold the lane. Because you don't have the wave clear, and you don't have the 1v1 potential. I mean, of course, you have some playmaking potential in team fights, but that's about it. I mean, you might as well go Malphite. It's easier. Or even a Scion. A Scion is also very tanky, has more crowd control, and is excellent in team fights as well. And he can hold the lane 1v1 super well. But yeah, Nautilus support much better in my opinion. I mean, I think he can do fine, but same reason like a Thresh that you get just super outscaled. And if you're rotating for teamfight and it doesn't work out for you guys, you're like, oh, I'm gonna rotate for the dragon, 5 versus 4, let's win it. You end up not winning it, and the enemy Fiora takes your turret. The enemy Fiora will have 5k gold, and you are like at 3k gold. You have a problem afterwards. And this will happen a lot of times, trust me on this one. Now for Vayne and Lucian, I think they are very good lane bullies against a few matchups, but they're also very easy to punish. If you play against an Evelynn, against a Lee Sin, against a Kha'Zix, against a Camille, so many champions will make you suffer. You will regret picking these champions. And I'm gonna be the jungler that makes you regret picking ADC top lane. I will camp your lane and make you go 0-5 in 5 minutes, and you will rage quit, cry, and say, jungle difference. Jungle difference. Someone help me. Someone help me. I will regret making you pick ADC jungle. Don't do I mean ADC top lane. Don't do that. And you as a jungler should do the same. Camp the living shit out of the enemy ADC top laner. Make them regret the pick. Make them regret it, because they will play aggressive, trying to zone the other guy away. Easy gank. And they're squishy as well. You can also dive them very easily. Next one, Kayle. Shit champion. Don't play him Baron lane. Don't do that. Don't do it. Okay, let's move on to jungle tier list. So for the jungle tier list, I don't think we have any major changes. Diana, in my opinion, one of the most broken champions right now. Hyper carry assassin that just does so much damage and has so much mobility as well. Aatrox, sustain god, tons of damage, crowd control, super tanky. Wukong, very good gank angles, insane in team fights, tons of sustain. With Visage, 20 ability haste, so you have Black Cleaver ability haste, you have Death Dance ability haste, you have Sunrow ability haste, you have Visage ability haste, and Stroke Siege. I think Wukong will be a nightmare. Wukong with Visage, I don't know why they buffed. I mean, it makes sense why they're buffing Visage, but I think they should have nerfed the Void Staff instead. I think the problem is Void Staff, 45%. Everyone is rushing Void Staff right now. So even if you get magic resistance, it's not that useful. So that's the main reason I think why they're buffing Visage, to make AP champions weaker. But the problem is, hey, maybe nerf Ludens, maybe nerf Void Staff. The AP items are too strong. Gregors, one-shotting machine. Morgana, poking late game monster, disgusting crowd control, oh my god. Shyvana, 1 vs 9, late game monster, runs you down, is tanky, tons of damage. Kha'Zix, you go into a brush and there's no ward, you are one-shotted. Sayonara, insane assassin with good hyper carry potential. Now Lee Sin is one of the best snowballing junglers in the game with high mobility. In the right hand, he just snowballs, gets 20 kills every game. And if you're a good Lee Sin, I think even in the, like up to Challenger, you can pull this off. Up to Challenger, a good Lee Sin with snowball the game so hard. Spam ganking, invades, gang, dead. What do you want to do? You're just gonna end up dying whole time. And Evelynn is very similar, that she's a spam ganking monster with an invisibility, because you play against little Timmies that have no idea how to lane against Evelynn. They play over aggressive, you just keep farming them, you get strong, you get a few kills, you snowball, you just one-shot everyone on the map, boom, GG's. Olaf against crowd control team comes, you just run them down, ignore the crowd control, you have true damage, and you ignore the crowd control, and it's just GG easy. Lydia, late game monster with tons of damage and insane ultimate crowd control. Jarvan got buffed, I think with the synergy on Visage, it's gonna make him even better, but it's not gonna be enough for S+ tier. Just because he falls off in the late game. His early game and mid game is excellent. His late game, he's a great tank, but at the end of the day, I am telling you guys, tanks are not meant to be OP and solo queue. If you have bad teammates, you can be 10-0 on the tank. Watch my Jarvan video. It's good. I think it's gonna come out soon. I think I was 10-0 in that game. I lost that game. Jarvan is a champion. If your teammates are bad, you will not win the game. If I have bad teammates on Diana, I will probably, or I might be able to carry the game. But if I have 4 bad teammates on Jarvan, or 2 bad teammates on Jarvan, there's no way. It's too hard. Kayn red form, very good. Works like a charm. Kayn blue form, nah, it's okay, but not that good. It's okay. Works against some team comps, if they're very squishy. Nunu is a ganking monster and is a great frontline and provides good crowd control. Yone, a late game scaling monster, is actually really strong, but I just feel like his early game is a little bit too slow paced for solo queue jungle. I mean, he's very good. 3 items, Yone is a beast. But I guess his early game is just a little bit too slow. It's the very same reason for Echo, by the way. Echo has the downside that he is also too slow in the early game. His jungle is really slow, and he needs 3 items before he's popping. But once he gets 3 items, he's just a one-shotting machine. Darius in the jungle also really strong, good carry potential with a snowball, with a Noxus Might, and with the ultimate resets. Riven, high mobility, high damage. Xin Zhao has decent mobility, good frontline, good damage, good ganking potential. Vi, good ganking potential, but not good hyper carry potential on your own. Aurelia, good hyper carry potential, but I feel like her ganking potential is not that good in the early game, and she is really hard to pull off. High skill ceiling. High skill ceiling. Jace, I think Jace is overall a pretty solid pick, does a lot of damage, is great in skirmishes in the early game, but isn't necessarily the greatest ganker and greatest hyper carry in the late game. Because Jace is champion, he is the strongest in the early mid game, or mid-late game, but in the late game he is not that strong. And a lot of games will go into the late game, where you have to be like a very strong hyper carry champion. Fiora is pretty strong in the early game, good in the mid game, and scales like a truck in the late game. Good hyper carry potential, but inconsistent in team fights to carry on your own if your teammates are bad. Obviously, Fiora is not the greatest team fighting champion. Like, you can be 10-0, but if your teammates are bad, you carrying a team fight on your own is not that easy. Fizz in the early game also a slow paced champion, but he is a late game scaling truck like Echo that just one-shots people once he gets 3 items. Kami got nerfed. They nerfed the damage modification on the second ability, so he's or she is not gonna kill the monsters in the late game as easily as she does right now, and she's not gonna secure the objectives as easily as she does right now. She's kind of slow-paced in the early game, but I think she is in the right hands and in the right team comps still very good. Has one of the best ganking potentials with her ultimate as well. Now, next one we have Pantheon, early game monster that snowboards super well, but in the late game he falls off. I said it already, I say it every tier list. Just gonna repeat myself here. Now we have Warwick, Mr. Warwick. Hey, I think he is, honestly, his ganking potential is really good. Hitting the ultimate can be kind of iffy, but the biggest problem is his team fighting. His team fighting and his, I don't know, he just doesn't have enough mobility or dashing or anything. If you play against high mobility team comp with crowd control, a Warwick will never work. It's unplayable. Grace, late game monster, early game 2 scaling. Ramos, early game, honestly, I would put him in the same ganking tier like a Jarvan and like a Lee Sin. He's a ganking machine, but he also needs to get successful ganks off, otherwise he will fall behind in gold per minute or in gold income in total, because his jungle tier is extremely slow. And at the end of the day, if you're tank, your teammates are bad, you will not carry on your own. And Amumu jungle tier is honestly not bad. He's great in team fights, but he's very easy to punish in the early game. Jax, 2 scaling, but late game monster. Renekton, good package overall, good damage, good mobility. Gwen. Now I'm gonna keep her here. I was thinking about putting her S tier. Or maybe I should. She's... No, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna put Gwen S. I've played Gwen a few times, and honestly, Yes, her clear is kind of slow in the early game and she needs to farm. But trust me, 3 items Gwen, if you're not behind, it's a guaranteed win. A 3 items plus Gwen, if you are not 0-5, or if you're doing even, or you're like, okay, you're 3-0 and you have 3 items, you will carry. You will carry. Gwen is just so broken then. 3 items Gwen plus is just too broken. I changed my mind. I forgot to change it, by the way. Like, I've played it a few times and I came to the realization her early game is not that bad. It's not good, but it's like an Echo tier bad. Echo tier slow. I think honestly Gwen might be a bit quicker because she can get Nash's Tooth in the early game and it synergizes better for her. Rengar hit and miss, snowballing monster though. Zed got nerfed. Jungle Clear worse. But I think he is still gonna be fine and in the right hands can still pop off some games. Master Yi hit the miss champion, either you snowball really well or you're just 0-10. There's no in between. There's no in between. And there's some team compositions that are very hard for Master Yi to play against. If they're really tanky, Master Yi can play. And if they have a Ramos, Master Yi is out to lose. Next one, Shen, Nautilus, Mundo. I think the problem of these champions are their jungle clear is, or their jungle clear is really slow. Some people will say, oh, Shen is so good. Shen is good, but in competitive, not necessary in solo queue. I don't think the value with the ultimate doesn't translate that well into solo queue. If you play competitive, you're just farming, and if you need to your counter gang with your ultimate, excellent. Excellent. The amount of times I used my ultimate to save someone and then they backed away instead of still taking the fight is insane. And then I'm losing a lot of farm and we're not even winning the fight. It's a nightmare, trust me. Try it, Shen, for yourself a few times and you will understand what I mean with some players are so bad that if you use ultimate on them, you're wasting your ultimate and you're wasting your time and you're wasting the potential of farming more. Nautilus, kind of slow paced and falls off in the late game. Doesn't carry as hard. Same for Mundo. I think Mundo is really situational. His jungle clear is okay-ish, but I feel like his ganking potential is shit, and his team fighting, I don't think he's a good carry. He's just a meat shield. Next one, Tryndamere. Tryndamere, very slow pace in the early game, needs to farm up, but in the late game, he is very strong. You see the pattern, a lot of times we have like the early game strong champions, and then a lot of times we have the late game strong champions that are scaling super well. But if you have the right balance between being strong in the early game, or being super oppressive or too OP in the late game, then you will end up in the S+ tier. And if it's not too good enough, then it's between A or S. But yeah, let's move on. So next we have mid lane. For mid lane we have Zoe. Zoe is, in my opinion, one of the most broken poking champions in the right hands. It's very hard to play against her, and her rotation and her crowd control are actually very good. Like, if you land a good sleep on someone with a third ability over the wall, the range is getting increased. It's like an Ari charm but on steroids. Ari charm on steroid, pretty much. And then now, if you play against the Zoe and she has like a good front line that's peeling for her, unplayable. The game is unplayable then. Yasuo got buffed. It's making him better, making him stronger. Like, they are lowered the cooldown that you can dash onto someone in the late game. So that's gonna make his team fighting, it's gonna make his team fighting better or easier. He's the late game monster. Kassadin, late game monster. Akali, assassination. 1 vs 9 hyper carry. Vex, insane crowd control. Good poke, good assassin. Ari, great catch potential, high mobility. Diana, high mobility, super burst damage in teamfights, ultimate, boom boom boom. Katarina, you get 1 reset, you win the game. I said every single time, and it's accurate, especially in solo queue. Like, you can have a team comp of 5 people with crowd control, like, and target lock crowd control, and they wouldn't be able to hit on Katarina. It's unplayable. Every time I play against a Katarina, I have a nightmare. I get PTSD. I'm like, oh no, here we go again. She gets 1 reset. Like, she's 0-3, she gets 1 reset, I'm like, here we go again. Game over, GG's, well played. Good job, Katarina. Nice champion. Karma, poking monster, high utility, insane in teamfights. Yone, insane in teamfights, tons of damage. Late game monster. Aurelia, hyper carry, assassination, one shot, mobility, pew pew pew, too much sustain. Corki, package, boom 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 boom. Like, one good package in a teamfight just wins the game, by the way. Tons of damage, decent mobility. Kind of tricky against a few matchups, but if you play it safe, you will be fine. Jace, early game monster, very oppressive in the laning phase, good poking damage. Pike in the right hands, a monster, rotation monster, catching people left and right. Gregors, very solid champion, tons of damage, good utility. Galio, very good utility, good frontline. Having Galio in a team makes your team fighting so much easier. I love having Galio mid lane in my team, by the way. I love it. Because then you have a good front line that does good damage and good crowd control. It's just a good package. Very solid. Like, there should be more Galio mid lane players. Not gonna lie. Aksha mid lane in Legendary Queue, a very, 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 very popular pick. I don't know why. There's so many people picking Aksha mid lane. And I think it's because he has very good roaming potential. He does a ton of damage. And his early game is one of the best in the mid game. Or in the mid lane. Oops, my bad. Fizz in the early game kind of weak, but late game monster, just one-shots you. Orianna 6, great utility poking mages, good in teamfights, super consistent most of the times. Not insane roaming potential to snowball the game though. Singed, great roaming potential to catch people, and insane in teamfights. In the early game, not that strong though. But I think if you're running Fleet, Second Wind, with a Second Wind buff, it's gonna make this early game even easier right now, that you just push in the lane with the poison and then you just try to rotate, trying to pick people off. Zed, good assassin, good in the 1v1 and good split pusher. Twisted Fate global ultimate, very good at snowballing and good crowd control with gold card. Lucian, high mobility ADC that does a lot of damage. Fiora, great duelist, strong in the 1v1, strong in skirmishes, and great at snowballing the game if you are dominating your laner. Pantheon, in the early game very strong, good roaming potential with the ultimate, and good snowballing potential, but in the late game he falls off. Veigar, good crowd control with a cage, early game very weak though, but a late game monster when he gets enough stacks, and into the right team com with, let's say you have a tanky support and maybe a bruiser in the jungle or bruiser in the top lane. Veigar can be very, very good in teamfights. Echo in the early game very weak, but late game he can be very good in teamfights. Annie, bad roaming potential in the early game, not that strong in the laning phase as well, but her team fighting can be pretty good with her catch potential, using a nice ultimate, whether use Protobot ultimate or Flash ultimate. Morgana, weak in the early game. Bad roamer, but in the late game she has pretty good poke potential and good crowd control that she can provide. Brand, lack of mobility, decent poke damage, good in teamfights. What do I say? Lack of mobility and bad roamer as well. Aurelian's so hard to play, good in teamfights. Can roam. Like, if you're good, you can roam around, try to snowball. But overall, his laning phase is hard to play against a lot of champions. Garen, solid tank, does everything pretty decent. Cannon great in teamfights, but in the early game, I think he's pretty weak against a lot of champions in the mid lane. Lux, I think Lux is... Wait, I think she... No, wait. Let me remove the star. I think Lux is fine. Good poke damage, good crowd control. Misfortune AP. I've seen a few Misfortune APs, and I have to say, a good ultimate in teamfights can be pretty devastating. And the early game with the buff is actually much better now. Seraphine. Good in teamfight. Bad roamer. Bad early game. I guess that's it. Kale. Super strong late game scaling champion, bad in the early game, bad roamer, and it takes a lot of time for Kale to be useful, but at least in the mid lane she gets to farm more safely than in the Baron lane, and it's not that easy to punish a K mid lane in comparison to Baron lane, because it's so easy to dive Kayle in the Baron lane, and there's like no one to help her out. But yeah, let's move on to Dragon lane. You guys might be wondering, Darkbreaker, why are you not putting Zeri under S+ tier? And I have to say, Zeri is a champion that is a late game monster. She is a late game monster. If you play her with a Lulu or a Yuumi, she becomes an absolute unstoppable beast. I think she is like Jinx Tristana level late game on steroid, just you're all dead. But the problem is high skill ceiling. I think the average player will have a very big problem using her auto attacks correctly, and I know I've played her on ping, so that was the main reason why it looked so bad, but I still think her mechanic is not that easy to use, and I've talked with Doom about her as well, and I mean, he said the same, that she is probably higher skill ceiling than a Draven, and it's gonna be hard to make her work correctly, but if you have the right setup and you have like a Lulu, late game, I think she has the potential to be S+ tier, and I think what Riot will do is they are gonna buff Zeri for the next patch, because she will probably have a bad average win rate because she's hard to play. And if a champion is hard to play and has low win rate, she will get buffed. And then next patch, the people have learned how to master Zeri. These players will absolutely dominate. And by that time, I will put her S+ tier. But for now, I will put her S tier. Is it a good reasoning? I think that's fine. I think some players in the right hands right now can make her S+ tier. But I rather just put her S tier right now, lowballing her a bit. And then when people have mastered her, then I will put her S+ tier. I think she has the potential to be S+ tier right now, because she's very similar to a Tristana. Early game maybe not that strong, but she has high mobility and she has a lot of damage. Like, she is insane. I just run you down. She has the I run you down mode with the ultimate. I just run you down. I run you down, and then she has high mobility as well. Good kiting. Very good kiting. Okay, Lucian, high mobility burst damage. Ezreal, high mobility poking damage. Corki, insane in team fights. Vayne, high mobility true damage. Invisibility, condemn, disgusting. Samira, the ADC of the Katarina of ADCs. Now I have it. The Katarina of ADCs. Very super solid poking damage with a lot of crowd control. Kai'Sa, super solid package. I wonder if I should move some of them into S tier. Maybe I should just move some of them into S tier. I think if I had to move people, I would move Varus and Kai'Sa. Varus is not necessarily a hyper carry. Varus is a super consistent champion that just pokes from far away. And Kai'Sa is also a super consistent champion. But I feel like she's not like, boom, oh my god, hyper carry, I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry. I think that's fair. Because some people have said I have maybe too many champions in S+ tier. But I think I would put these. I think there's... I've talked with Doom. He said to me, maybe I shouldn't put Corki in S+. But I will. Lucian, Ezreal, Vayne, Samira, and Tristana. I will put them... Nah, this will not change. These 5 will never change. Corki, I can see Corki being an S. But I think Corki can be so good in solo queue with the package. Because everyone clouds on tier. Everyone clouds in Dragon. One good package, boom. I don't even play Corki, and I had a 10 win streak on this champion. I don't even play Corki. Okay, next one. Xayah, super consistent, good peeling. Jinx, good hyper carry, kind of weak in the early game. Draven, very similar reason to Zeri. Draven is one of the best snowballing ADCs in the early game, and all the good ADC players will dominate on Draven every single time, like Doom. Doom will just completely demolish on Draven, but I think the average person will struggle playing Draven correctly because of his lack of mobility and his high skill ceiling, like mechanically. Jhin, Strong in the early game in the laning phase, but in the mid and late game, or in the late game, I should say late game, not as strong as a hyper carry. Caitlyn consistent champion, but she got actually a pretty significant nerf. -4 base AD is a lot. I wasn't sure if I'm gonna put her into A tier, but I'm gonna put her in the lower spectrum of the S tier. -4 AD is a huge nerf. It's gonna make every auto attack weaker. It's gonna make every ability weaker. It's a big nerf, actually. So, do you guys think she is still S tier, or do you guys think, oh, maybe she's like an A plus now? But yeah, that's commit. Misfortune got buffed, actually. In fact, in the early game, she's gonna be better, but I think in the late game, she's not strong enough for me to put the S tier. Ashe, not enough damage, but good utility. Karma, Orianna, Lux, and Ziggs, good poking damage. Overall, very, very solid, but I feel like they would be better in competitive. In competitive, they are like S or S+, but I think in solo queue, just A tier. Brand, Morgana are just kinda weaker versions in comparison to the other four, and Senna ADC is really not that good. Just play her in support. I think in support she's much better, because as an ADC, she just doesn't carry as hard as the others, and she doesn't do as much damage. So let's move on to support. For support, Karma is the godly hyper carry under the supports. Like, the amount of supports I've seen in Legendary Queue that have more damage than everyone else, disgusting. Insane poke, insane crowd control, and insane utility in teamfights. Just very good. Yuumi got nerfed, but I still think she is broken. You guys will understand. Play against let's say you play against a Fett Tristana Yuumi combo, or Vayne, or maybe even Zeri in the future. And then you come back to this tier list before you're writing, nah, she's not S+ anymore. Then you come back and you're like, yeah, we're right, she's still broken. Senna got a huge buff, actually. Her first ability slows now, and I'm gonna make a video for her. I hope you guys will enjoy it, and I hope you guys will play like humans when you're playing Senna after that, because there are a lot of bad Senna players, but I can't rate her bad just because there are so many bad Senna players. She can be a very, very good and annoying pick. She's not the traditional support. She's more like a second carry, so you want to pick her when you also have like enough frontline, or you have enough poke or peeling, then she works like a charm. So pick her into the right team comp, and if you play well and you need to land the second ability, if you can't land the second ability, don't play Senna, don't play her, please, don't do it to me, don't do it to me, my heart can't do this anymore. Okay, next one. Thresh, Gragas, Nautilus, Alistar, Rakan, Galio, insane playmakers, good crowd control, and good frontline, and just good peelers as well. Like, I love to play with these champions. I love chat tank engagers. I love them. Play them. Be chats. Don't be the enchanter that does nothing. Be the chat engager. Boom, boom, boom. Crowd control. 4-man knockup. 5-man up. Boom. Good rotating. Roaming. I want to see that. Pyke. In the right hands, Pyke looks like S+. In the wrong hands, Pyke looks like C tier. Pyke is an excellent snowballing champion that controls the map with his roaming. So a good Pyke controls the whole map and ganks left and right and left and right, and you just want to delete the game. But the bad Pyke, you're like, Pyke, please delete the game. You should delete the game. Okay, next one. Lux, good carry support, decent crowd control as well, or decent peeling potential. Nami and Janna, great peeling enchanters. Lulu, great enchanting buffer that makes the hyper carry insanely strong. Ashe support, good utility catching potential with the ultimate as well. Leona, Braum, and Zed are decent tanks, good catch potential and good playmaking potential, but I just don't feel like they are up to par with the other engaging supports I've mentioned here. Soraka is really inconsistent in my opinion. In some games, she can be a nightmare when you pick her into the right team comp, and in some games, she is just a minion. So pick her into the right team comp, then I think she is very solid. But if you pick her into the wrong team comp, she is pretty much useless. So it's a hit and miss with Soraka players. Some games I see Soraka play, I'm like, wow, she's so good. And then some games I'm like, oh, fuck Soraka. Again, the Soraka, no, FF. Okay, next one. Sornot, Seraphine are really... I think they are decent in the mid and late game, but in the early game they are very weak and easy to punish. Morgana weak in the early game. They buffed her, in fact. They buffed Morgana support, but I honestly don't like Morgana support. I don't think it's that good. And her laning phase is really not that strong. And I think there are other supports that just do a better job at what she's doing. Blitzcrank hit and miss champion. Either he's useful and hits his hook, or he's useless and he doesn't hit his hooks. There's no in between. But yeah, that's great for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you guys are enjoying this tier list, and tell me guys your feedback about the tier list. I want to hear your opinion about Zeri. What do you guys think where she belongs? Do you think she's broken, or do you think I put her in a solid position right now, or do you think she's even weaker? But yeah, that's great. I see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.